Okay guys, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at Stellar and specifically the XLM coin and why buying and holding 10,000 XLM might be the best decision you've ever made. Guys, as we get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you've subscribed, hit the bell, tapped on all, and you won't miss another Stellar XLM update. Now, with that said, done and out of the way, let's get into XLM and find out what's been going on most recently and what makes this project so exciting. So, Stellar is a cryptocurrency that wants to help the world's unbanked populations have access to financial services. It's a pretty big thing, it's a big task, and so many people unbanked at the moment. So this is not a small feat by any stretch of the imagination. And it is planning on doing this by making it cheaper and quicker to move money from one currency to another. And currently the world moves money around in several different ways, and some of these old historical systems are a bit cumbersome and obviously are not the most efficient in terms of moving money around the world. So Stellar is looking to correct a lot of these things. Now, let's talk a little bit about who invented Stellar. So Stellar was actually founded by 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘, who also invented Ripple, the company, and XRP and the XRPL. He left Ripple, the company, I think back in 2014 to focus on Stellar full time. And basically Jed has pretty kind of led the way. He's built the team up here, and it is a fantastic project trying to do very similar things to XRP. However, it is a totally different mission. So we obviously have Ripple. Their mission is to basically be able to do cross-border payments very efficiently and very effectively. Although XLM and Stellar can do this, their mission has pretty much been to basically bank the unbanked, right? And to try to do a totally different mission. So there's two fantastic projects, very similar tech. The Stellar network is basically a carbon copy of the XRPL with a few tweaks here and there, but ultimately both working in very similar ways. Now, obviously, we have Ripple going after and creating loads of relationships with the current financial system and lots of banks and creating new corridors, all that kind of stuff. Whereas on Stellar's side, we often refer to XLM as the people's coin, is trying to handle the big problem around banking the unbanked, right? So some fantastic things that have been achieved here. I think in 2014, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 left Ripple. In 2015, I believe the Stellar Development Foundation releases its white paper. In November of 2015, the network went live. October 2017, Stellar and IBM agreed to a partnership. This was to increase the speed of global payments, and we see lots of fantastic things going on with IBM and blockchain tech, etc. But what makes it so special? Well, Stellar is a platform that connects regular banks to a payment system that anyone can use to move money across borders quickly and virtually no cost. Okay, so before that, you needed to understand that there are several different elements to make up Stellar, right? So there's quite a few things that you obviously have to understand from a fundamental technical level. Now, we're not going to get into a lot of the technicals and things like that in this particular video. We're only going to keep this video quite light and go through some of these fundamental things that Stellar are doing, which makes it a very attractive investment opportunity. Now, I am not a financial advisor. I think it's important that we acknowledge this, and it is important that you do your own research much further beyond the things that we're going to bring up in this video. But with that being said, after doing your own research, if you think you've come across the same what I have here, then you'll also be thinking exactly like I am, thinking that this is a fantastic opportunity. So what else is different with Stellar? Well, the network has an automatic currency exchange with fiat currencies and other cryptocurrencies. So you don't actually have to worry about doing any conversion or paying third parties to do this for you. The Stellar network also allows companies to create their own tokens on top of the lumens to take advantage of the speedy transaction times and low fees. So the cost of moving money on the Stellar network is kept low to allow lots of people to use the network. In terms of scale in tests, the network is containing 1 billion accounts. It can process 1,000 transactions per second. So obviously currently Ethereum can handle about 25 transactions per second and Bitcoin about 7 transactions per second. So obviously vastly faster than the original two, right? However, 1,000 transactions per second is not as fast as some of these new generation blockchain techs that are coming out now as well. So we also do have to acknowledge that there are some limitations in terms of transactions per second, but these limitations are still quite high numbers. They're not small, and they'll still do a lot of throughput on those networks. Okay, so we're not going to talk too much more about that. We're not going to talk about really what Stellar is from a technical point of view, but we are going to talk about a few things that are happening around the Stellar ecosystem that are crucial to understand, because these things are what makes Stellar so great and make it a really interesting investment opportunity. So we're going to start with the ACORN, okay, and why ACORN chose Stellar, because obviously, as we just briefly mentioned, you can create your own tokens on the Stellar network, right? And this is exactly how you're running the ACORN project. And the ACORN is a shared vision of Africa. This is basically smart cities, and it's a way to basically pay people in a cryptocurrency, and is definitely something that we are seeing a lot more of over in Africa. Obviously, we speak a lot about Cardano and the things that they're doing over in Ethiopia, Tanzania, World Mobile, all that kind of stuff. Loads of development is happening over in Africa, and Stellar is right at the heart and the foundation of this. And ultimately, you also is ACORN. Previously, in the singer, rapper, moved over into a bit of an entrepreneurial kind of stance, has pushed forward with developing Africa and creating smart cities. ACORN is the coin, and it has been chosen to be put onto the Stellar ecosystem. So this is a fantastic thing, and as you see over the next few years, this project is going to go from strength to strength to strength, and ultimately we're going to start seeing some fantastic things happen. But it doesn't end there either. At the beginning of this year, we also saw the USDC go live on the Stellar network. Now, in itself, this might seem like a really small milestone, except it has huge implications for a bigger piece. Ultimately, the USDC, a stablecoin, a dollar-backed stablecoin, is basically now available on Stellar's decentralized exchange with 6 stablecoin pairs, right? This is basically an interesting way to allow for people to move out of things like XLM into USDC and also be able to transact on the ecosystem. So although this seems like quite a small milestone, it has huge implications, because we also saw on the back of this 15,000 farmers that will be using USDC on the Stellar blockchain for payments. So this goes down and is all around basically being able to transact locally. These are unbanked farmers who are in requirement, a severe requirement, to be able to actually trade with each other in a way without banks actually having infrastructure there. So this is about buying and selling grains and basically be able to transact with each other. And they are using USDC on the Stellar ecosystem to do this. So this is it's a small number of people, right? 15,000 farmers, but there's a huge deal in Africa. And again, this is how things start. Small little bite-sized chunks until you actually go ahead and get these governmental contracts and start actually running countries on the blockchain, in the case of Cardano, right? So we're seeing lots going on with Africa because these 15,000 farmers are, of course, in Africa. And what you see here is basically the stablecoin getting launched at the beginning of the year, these farmers now being able to use this USDC to transact with each other and make their lives a little bit more bearable and a little bit more easier. And this is what is so important about banking the unbanked, because this is having a huge impact on these people's lives, and this is real world adoption of cryptocurrency tech. So what you're seeing here is along with a handful of a few other blockchain techs and other projects that are doing this exact thing for real world adoption. And this is what you're seeing here with Stellar. So this is fantastic. We covered this well up I think at the back end of 2020 going into 2021. And again, fantastic stuff going on in the system. But of course, we've been talking quite a lot around, Stellar being used to bank the unbanked, but it has so many more, functions than just that, right? Because it is a copy of the XRPL, and we are fully aware of what can be used and what can be achieved on the XRPL. With a few tweaks made to it, the Stellar network also has lots of other fantastic functionality that we've been talking about for quite some time. The next one that kind of comes to mind is, of course, the German real estate group that has issued $24 million worth of bonds using the Stellar blockchain. Now, obviously, we've been talking about the tokenization of real-world assets, and I think most people in this space refer to these things as NFTs, and we all assume, or at least a lot of people do, that an NFT is artwork or a music file or a video file, when in actual fact, it can be something something totally different. It can be a real world asset, right? And what you could actually end up seeing is these NFTs as we know them today actually representing maybe even a home somewhere in the world, right? We see real estate being tokenized, and we're seeing this being tokenized on the Stellar blockchain. This is a big deal considering the real estate market globally is trillions of dollars in value. And if we start to see that being tokenized and actually issued on chain, this is a huge real world adoption at an absolute monumental standard and level. This is going to be fantastic adoption. And this is, of course, just one issuer of real estate on the Stellar network, but we also have Smartlands who want to build a real estate market using the Stellar network as well. And this is, again, a fantastic real world use case of the Stellar blockchain that goes outside, of course, just banking the unbanked. And again, this whole concept of basically putting real estate on chain is not new. This is something that many projects have been talking about. This cropped up well over a year ago with VeChain wanting to dabble into and talking about tokenization of real world assets. Real estate was mentioned, fine art was another one that was mentioned, and ultimately what we're seeing with the NFT movement is this whole way of moving from a real physical world into a digital world and having everything tokenized in an immutable way on chain. And this basically is going to do away with so many things in this world that make it a little bit more difficult for us. So this is going to streamline processes. And it's important that we also acknowledge a few additional things that are happening in the space, right? Because we talk about tokenization of real world assets and specifically on the Stellar blockchain, but we have to also acknowledge that artificial intelligence is also going to have a huge impact on tokenization of real world assets as well, because AI is going to basically be the AI plus smart contracts and tokenization is basically going to do away with a lot of lawyers, because ultimately a lot of those smart contracts can be programmed, they can execute. You don't necessarily need a real world lawyer to kind of cover off and do all their kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Instead, you could have your AI doing this, and there could be a birth of a whole new industry where there are people who actually vet and cross-check smart contracts rather than actually relying on a lawyer to do all your contract checking for you. So there's some real interesting things that come on the back of the idea and the concept of real estate market being on the Stellar ecosystem. And again, thinking about everything else that kind of goes along with that and everything else that could also be tokenized on the blockchain. So again, when we talk about Stellar and we think about the real world levels of adoption that are actually occurring for the Stellar ecosystem, we obviously have spoken about smart cities and ACORN. We've been talking about USDC. We obviously have 15,000 farmers. We have German real estate issuing real estate bonds on the Stellar network. We have Smartlands wanting to build real estate marketplaces on the Stellar ecosystem. All of these things have absolutely huge impacts on the overall. And again, most recently, one of the biggest things that we've actually had out in the last couple of months in terms of Stellar is how Stellar is looking to acquire the payment giant MoneyGram. Okay, this is again speculation at the moment, but if Stellar do actually succeed in acquiring MoneyGram, then the implication of this in terms of cross-border payments and all of those kind of good things would be absolutely massive as well. So I think gives a long-term hold on Stellar and everything that they're trying to do and as they have been achieving is something that I think a lot of people are doing and a lot of people are aligned to. The other thing that's also really important that we do acknowledge when it comes to Stellar is obviously the fantastic team that sits behind it, right? We talk about the Stellar ecosystem, the Stellar network. We also have to acknowledge the Stellar Development Foundation, and that's led by Danielle Dixon, and does a fantastic job at getting everything across the line. And of course, when it goes quiet, we often get these absolute bombshells hit us with some fantastic news. Stellar Development Foundation and Danielle Dixon do a fantastic job as well of communicating and keeping up with PR and making sure everyone is aware of the fantastic things that are going on there as well. So overall, when we actually take a look at what the system is, how it was created, who founded it, it's the fact that it's a copy of the XRPL with a few tweaks added to it to make it a little bit more robust and a little bit more suited to its purpose. Then that's coupled with the fact that we have ACORN, who is basically building smart cities on chain. Then we have USDC and real world adoption with farmers. We also have real estate being tokenized on the ecosystem and potentially a real estate marketplace coming in the future. And then obviously the acquisition of MoneyGram. All of these things aligned together makes this a very interesting investment choice for myself. That's why I feel that holding at least 10,000 Stellar for the long haul seems to be a pretty sensible decision, at least in my opinion. As I said earlier, I am not a financial advisor, and it is important that you do your own research. There is no substitute for this. Unfortunately, there are many influencers across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., and sometimes they are, paid to actually tell you their opinion. So it's important that ultimately you do your own research. And in doing your own research, you'll come across some of the things that I've also been talking about in this video, but also allow you to make your own decision based on your own research. So guys, hopefully you have found this video useful and informative. There's a lot going on with Stellar, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity. If you have found it useful, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, tap on all, and you will never miss another Stellar update. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.